Hey guys, welcome back to another Algebra 1 lesson. We're going to look at using the distributive property. So we've talked about the distributive property off and on this year, quite a bit actually. I just want to remind you that what the distributive property entails is taking a number outside of the parentheses and multiplying it by both terms or all the terms inside the parenthesis. In this case, it's two terms. Remember, terms are separated by pluses and minuses. So I'm going to take this 2x and I multiply it by the x, and I get 2x squared. Then I move on. I take the 2x and I multiply it by the positive 3, and that gives me a positive 6x. So what we're doing today is we're working backwards. You're going to be given this, and you're asked to write it in factored form, or as the product of two things. So looking at this, it may seem a little daunting at first to try to write this in factored form, but if we work backwards, it's not all that difficult. So the first thing I want to do is I want to look at 12a squared, and I'm going to write it in factored form. You guys probably remember doing factor trees prior to this class. So I can rewrite 12 as the product of 2 and 6. Well, I can't break 2 down any further, but I know I can break 6 down into the product of 2 and 3. So the prime factorization of 12a squared would be 2 times 2, which is 4, 4 times 3, which is 12, times a times a. Okay, I want to do the same thing for 16a. I'm going to break it down. 16 is the same as 2 times 8. 8 is the same as 2 times 4, and 4 is the same as 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, and I can't forget my a. Okay, so step 2 then is to take these prime factorizations that we just wrote out, and we're going to underline what they both have in common. Okay, so I'm going to use a different color here, and I'm going to look. What do they both have in common? Or in my case, I'm going to circle them. Okay, they each has a 2, and each has an a. So since they each have a 2 and they each have an a, I'm going to put that together. 2 times a, this is the GCF of both of these terms, right? The GCF of both terms is 2 times a, which is nothing more than 2a. So then the final step then is to rewrite it as the product of the factors. So I took a 2a out of this 12a squared. So what did that leave me with? Well, when I took out that 2a, that left me with 2 times 3 times a, which 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times a is just 6a. Okay, when I pulled out the 2a down here, that left me with all of this. 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So it left me with a positive 8. So this is the factored form of this. Remember, factor means that it's two things being multiplied together. We can check it using the distributive property. 2a times 6a would be 12a squared, and 2a times 8 is a positive 16a, which is exactly what we started with, so we know that we have written it in factored form correctly. All right, so let's try another one. This time there are 3 terms. We're going to break it down the exact same way. I encourage you to pause the video and give this a try on your own. Okay, I'm going to break down 20x squared y squared. 20 is the same as 2 times 10. 10 is the same as 2 times 5. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. Then times x, times y, times y. Okay, same thing for negative 45x squared y. I'm going to write it down. I've got negative 1, because this is a negative, times 5 times 3 times 3, because I know that 9 times 5 is 45. So I broke down 9 into 3 times 3. Then I've got times x times y. And last one, negative 35x squared y. I'm going to rewrite as negative 1 times 5 times 7 times x times y. So step 2, I'm not going to write it all out like I did before. I'm just going to do it all at once. I'm looking for what does each thing have. Well, I can quickly see that each thing has an x. Looks like each thing has 2 x's. Okay, let's see. Do they all have a y? Yep, each one has a y. Oh, why did I put a y? There shouldn't have been a y there. So no, they don't each have a y. Your teacher just is goofy. Check in to make sure everybody was paying attention, right? Okay, so there was no y, so I don't know why I put that y there. So they don't all have a y. They don't all have a 7. Looks like they do all have a 5. So what is the GCF, the greatest common factor of all of these? Well, they all have a 5 and they all have two x's. So 5x squared is the GCF. So if I pull the GCF out of that first term, I pull out that 5x squared, what am I left with? 2 times 2, which is 4, times y times y. So 4y squared. What am I left with here? Negative 1 times 9. So that's negative 9 and a y. Okay, and what am I left with here? Negative 1 times 7, which is negative 7. So this is the factored form. Again, we can distribute and check. That would be 20x squared y squared. That's good. Negative 45x squared y. That looks good. And negative 35x squared. So we did it correctly. This is the factored form of this. All right, so we have a word problem that we're going to use factoring to solve. If we study volcanoes, Mount St. Helens is a very interesting volcano to study the eruption of. I looked it up earlier and was looking at some pictures. It's pretty impressive. So what this problem tells us is that when Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, the initial lateral blast had a velocity of 440 feet per second. So the expression 440t minus 16t squared models the height of a rock erupted from the volcano after t seconds. Okay, so what it wants us to do is write this expression in factored form. So I went ahead and split it up. It was 440t minus 16t squared. I split it up so that I can write it in factored form. Again, pause the video and try this on your own. I've got 440 is the same as 2 times 220, which I can quickly see is the same as 2 times what? 110, which is the same as 2 times 55, which is the same as 5 times 11. So now this is factored. 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 11 times t. This is the same as negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. I was thinking in my mind 4 times 4. I know 4 is the same as 2 times 2. And then times t times t. So what do they have in common? Looks like they each have a 2. They each have 2 2's. Oh, look, they each have 3 2's, and they each have a t. So 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. So they each have 8t in common. If I factor that out, I'm left with 5 times 11, which is 55. And I'm left down here with negative 1 times 2, which is negative 2 times t. So negative 2t. Again, distribute it and check. And we do get 440t minus 16t squared. All right, we're going to stop this video there. That's a wrap for today, and we will continue with this in the next video.